So we're going to continue the conversation a little bit today from last week. So we spoke a lot about what migration could look like from a self-hosted vault to a HCP managed vault. And, you know, we went through something that I call the secrets management roadmap. It's probably not a great name for it, but it was, I guess, a bit of free consultancy that you got from me, because these are the types of approaches that you can take to ensure that you have success in your migration and adoption journeys, right? So since then, you know, I've had a lot of side conversations with people. I've had loads and loads of questions around different things, and a lot of the questions have actually not even been around the secrets management roadmap. A lot of it's been around implementation, right? So I figured I would do a very, very small scale example of what a migration could look like, right? Hey, that's my wife just walked by. Say hi. So yeah, you know, I've had loads and loads of chats with people, and one of the things that came up actually during a co-working session, actually, I think it was last week, and I think DevOps Adil, who's in the chat, was in this co-working session. I was messing around, just trying to find out some stuff, and then I realized that there is no API endpoint for Vault to actually import transit keys, right? So this idea that you can export you can make your transit keys exportable and then go ahead and export your transit secrets engine keys with a view to importing it into a new vault was a bit of a flawed idea, you know. So I definitely learned something that day. So that was one of the things that kind of came up, is, well, if you can't import keys because there's no import endpoint, how do we actually go about migrating the transit secrets engine from one vault to another, right? So I don't necessarily have the answer for that, but I guess on live stream today, we are going to give that a go, right? So in terms of that part, I'm not very well prepared for it. I kind of figured I would just YOLO it, just going to try it on live stream, and I was going to rely on some help from the chat if I do any pebcaks or any foolish mistakes in my code. So let me just get a screen up so we can have a quick look at some stuff. Right, give me a sec. Hey, Mrs. DevOps Rob, my wife, how you doing? Thank you very much. Thanks for breakfast this morning, man. It was lovely. She's here supporting. I appreciate it. Gun Girl 34, one of your biggest fans, is here, sat next to me. Okay, cool. So let me just quickly log in. So what I have here, I'll just quickly switch my screen. Desktop. And just get rid of that. And can we get rid of this? Yes, we can. Amazing. So what I have here is a local vault. It's just a development enterprise vault that I have. And I've set up a bunch of namespaces, right? So let's just take a look at namespace 1, for example. I'll just go inside there. You can see that I have KV enabled and I have transit enabled in this namespace, right? And we have just a bunch of other things as well. So we've enabled token auth method. Well, that's actually, sorry, the app role auth method, tokens enabled by default. And we have user pass. You're speaking another language to me. I did tell you it was a work stream. We're now full in Vault security. See, we have all these things enabled, right? If I go back to, can I actually get back to manage namespaces from here? No, I cannot. So if I was just to go back to the root namespace and just pick another one at random, right? So we'll just go to the root namespace and just pick, let's just pick 4, for example, right? We'll just log into 4. And you can see we've got the same kind of setup, right? So these are like your common things that you have across namespaces. And then again, we've got the same authentication methods, right? So there's nothing fancy going on here. I try to keep this as simple as possible. Let me just zoom my screen just to make sure that it's a bit more legible. Right. So the goal here is, what we want to do is we want to migrate these auth methods and these secrets engines over to a HCP managed vault, right? So if we head over to here, and we're in the admin namespace, right? So you can see I was messing around, so I've already got one namespace created here. So what we'll do is we'll create a different namespace, right? And we're going to use Terraform to go through this. Now, in terms of how this is going to work, what we want to do is we want to try and create a more modularized way of doing things, right? I don't want to sit down and write the same code over and over again to migrate these namespaces from the self-hosted vault. Oh, let's just close that. To the HCP vault. So essentially what we're going to do is we've created a Terraform module. I kind of did this in advance because I knew there would be some things that I'd run into, and I just wanted to give you as much value as possible during this live stream, right? So so let's have a look at this. I'm just gonna zoom my screen. Give me a second. I want to make sure that you can read what I have on my code editor. Oop, didn't mean to do that. So it is. So hopefully that is more readable for you, right? So what I've done is I created a simple module. It's probably not as complete as the example I've just given you in the self-hosted vault. So if we have a look here, I've just created a main, and all we're doing is we're saying that inside each namespace we want a few things, right? We want the user pass auth method, and we want the app-role auth method as well. And we're also saying that we want the transit secrets engine in there as well. So nothing too fancy. Obviously this template, if you like, could be a lot more complicated to suit your use cases. You could have all sorts of policies going on inside there. You can have maybe within your key value store, you can have a particular path which houses some kind of metadata, which is something you rely on operationally for it, right? So it's literally all we're doing. We're gonna, every namespace that we create, we're gonna go ahead and add these resources in there. Okay. Now, I'll explain some of the complications that I ran into when I was creating this very, very simple example of a Terraform module to do this. So if we take a look at how we're actually going to go ahead and use this module, right? I have this code here, which is literally just, we're just doing a few things here, right? So firstly, we want to tell Terraform what the address is of our HCP Vault cluster, right? So I've just declared this variable here so we can reuse that, right? The next thing we want to do is we need a admin token for the HCP Vault cluster. Now, the way I've done it is I've just set it as an environment variable, which Terraform is going to pick it up from there, because it's not great to really show on live stream, though sometimes I don't have a choice, but it doesn't matter. This is just a demo environment that will get burned as soon as the live stream's over, so it's cool. Then the next thing is, this is the namespace that we want to create, right? So as you saw from the example earlier on, I created namespace 1, right? So let's just create namespace 2. So we'll just change that there, right? And that's just a variable because we're going to use that later on. Right? Now, what we're doing here is we're now just doing our provider declaration here. So we're just giving it the address, which we specified in the variable above. We're giving it the token, which again is another variable above there. And the namespace that we want to operate within is admin. Now this is key because it's the kind of thing that you'll run into so much trouble thinking, why are you getting permission denied? It's because if you don't specify a namespace, it's going to try to go in by root. And in terms of HCP Vault, root namespace is restricted for the HCP team who are managing Vault for you, right? So us as secrets consumers, as customers, do not have access to the root namespace, right? So admin is our root namespace. So whatever we do, we always need to make sure we specify what that namespace is, right? So here, all I'm doing is I create a namespace, right? So it's going to be according to this variable that we set up here, which is ns2. And now that we have that namespace, we can create another provider block, because here's the thing, like I say, we created that namespace within the root namespace, right? So, well, the admin namespace, shall I say. So it's a bit of a nested namespace, if you like, right? But anything we do from this point onwards, right, it's going to do it in the admin namespace unless we provide a different provider declaration, right? So what we do is we just declare our provider again, but this time we give it a different namespace path. So we're basically saying that it's going to be the namespace we've just created, which is nested into the admin namespace. And we just alias it so we don't have to keep going through this rigmarole all over again. We can literally reference this as vault.nested, right? So that's kind of all of our prerequisites done. So we've got our provider set up to actually run in the module. We've created a namespace, and now we can configure that namespace using the module. So this is a very templated way of doing things, right? So here within the module, because it's very straightforward, like what we're doing, it's literally got one argument that you need to give it, which is the namespace argument, right? It just wants to know what is the namespace that it's going to be applying all this configuration to, right? And again, we're just using this provider that we've just declared above and that's the alias that we've set. And we've put in the dependencies here because we just want to make sure that this doesn't run until the namespace is actually created. So we're just structuring our code a little bit. So if I run that, we should get namespace 2, right? So let me just do a tf init. We should be good to go. Let's run a plan. Let's see how we do. Hopefully I don't get any errors. Hopefully the demo gods are with me and I got an error. What is that? Right, so it's saying there's no root for this namespace that I've just tried to create. So that's cool. That's because it hasn't actually created the namespace yet. So if we go back up in our code, which is what's a bit complicated about this, right? So I think it might have been Grateful Cafe, potentially, that mentioned this in a previous live stream, saying one of the annoying things is that you're kind of stuck to admin, right? So because you're stuck to admin, it means that any Terraform you try to create means you have to first create the namespace, and then you can apply the configuration there, right? So we've just run into that, and I hadn't actually run into that the first time. So now we have a bit of an issue, right? So what we're trying to do is we're trying to create this namespace. Does it actually say anything here? No, it does not, right? So actually what we might actually end up doing is creating the namespace by itself and then applying a module to that namespace, right? So let's just attempt it that way. If I comment out this code here, this is where it can get a bit tedious, right? So it's good you kind of see these things just on live stream so you can run into it. So just clear the screen and then run that plan again and see what happens. Provider configuration not present. Oh, do you know what? Let's just do a, oh, did I not? I did do the provider configuration. Oh, maybe I need to do a tf init again. That should run. Let's try a plan. We're still getting that. So what I'm actually going to do, this is probably some kind of state issue that I'm getting with Terraform, which can get a little bit annoying. So if I just remove these things, sources to do TF version 14 plus, it tries to evaluate the provider beforehand during the plan. So you're saying that if I just YOLO it and just do a TF apply, it should run. Let's try that, right? Furthermore, let me just see, what version am I on? 0.15. Okay, cool. So you're probably right there. Thank you very much for that tip. So let's just try YOLO, right? Let's firstly, let's just uncomment this and see if it just worked, because it worked before, and I think I YOLO'd it when I was messing around. So if I do a tf apply and do dash auto approve, let's see what happens. I've had to do that too. Apply the namespace creation first. So you're saying I shouldn't be doing what I'm about to do? You think I should comment it out? Let's go with the way that it's worked for DevOps to do, right? Let's comment that out, right? And let's apply this namespace. So your app pro auth backend referring to the new provider, exactly. Hold on. Namespace. TF apply won't run actually because it still runs a plan. Okay, so that means we've got to do it like this. So if I just make sure I've hit save there and then run that. Oh, provider, what's going on here? Module namespace vault auth backend user pass. Its original provider configuration is at, but it has been removed. It occurs when provider configuration is removed while it creates. Ah, I see what's happened. Okay, cool. I've got an idea. Okay, I know what's going on. Right. So what we're gonna do is we'll just do that. Actually, so we'll revert that back to NS1, right? And then what we'll do is we'll create another module. So if I just copy that configuration there. Actually, no, what I need to do is create another namespace, right? So if I create another Vault namespace, oops, sorry, this is a bit messy. So if I create this namespace here, again, but this time I'm going to explicitly set this. I'm going to hard code it this time. I'm not going to use the variables. So I'm going to call it ns2, right? So if we create that, and then this is where it gets really, really complicated with the namespaces, right? So then what we'll do is, and we can keep that in there, and we can keep that in there as well, right? So what it should do is create a it should create a new namespace. Oh, duplicate resource. Oh yeah, sorry. Resource. Sorry, my bad. So we'll call this one ns2. There we go again. YOLO. Hopefully we don't get any errors. Okay, cool. So we've now created the namespace. Whew, that was tough, wasn't it? Something as simple as this being so tough, right? So now we've created the namespace. What we want to do is we want to create another module, right? So I'll just copy this and just paste it down here. And we're just gonna rename this one here. I'm gonna call it namespace 2, right? And in terms of the provider, let's create another provider alias. So we'll just copy this and we'll just pop this up here, paste it there. And actually, I'm just going to hard code it now just because we don't want to get into the whole variables messing around kind of thing. So we're just going to put ns2 and we're going to call this nested2. So that should work. And then what we'll do is inside here, we'll just change that to nested2, and the namespace, we'll just hard code it again, just because we run into a few problems already. So we'll put ns2. And in theory, that should work. That should configure namespace 2. But before you even run that, let's just go over to our GUI. Just zoom this in a little bit. Okay. And then if we go to namespaces, maybe I'll just copy the token and refresh, copy token and just refresh that. I'll probably have to log in again. Okay, maybe I don't have to log in, but we should see, yeah, so we've got namespace 2. So if we go inside namespace 2, it's probably not going to have anything but cubbyhole, right? So we have cubbyhole If you look at access, it's just got the token, right? So we just have a naked namespace. It's not being configured, right? Before we continue, I can see my good buddy DevOps Adil is being really helpful in the chat. So let me just run through this. So I've had to do that to apply the namespace creation first. So we've just done that. It's a little bit annoying that it works like that, but hey ho. Terraform apply won't run actually because it still runs a plan. See, so it's jarring. So the module called namespace, to be honest, I don't know why it doesn't work at times, because I have got it working with both namespace creations using the Vault provider with the new namespace. It's true, very, very true. So this works. I couldn't tell you why. Right, so let me just have a quick look at this. I'm loving the doggos chat as well in the chat. I'm loving that Gun Girl 34. So this is some code by DevOps Adil. Let me just zoom this so we can all have a good read. Thanks for posting this, by the way, bud. So you set some local variables at the top. So here you go. You're defining a namespace, which is according to the application name in your local variable. And then you create a provider, which you're aliasing as default, and you're basically giving it this namespace. So default. Okay, cool. And then you're creating your auth backends against that provider there. It's just making sure that it does it in the correct namespace, right? And then here, you're doing a similar thing, right? You're just calling a module, which is doing a bunch of things, whatever that module is. And it's making sure it operates within that namespace. I'm not sure about what this is, but we can come back to that. And again, the same, you're creating a AppRo auth backend login. Oh, okay, cool. So this is actually using a login mechanism within Terraform to actually authenticate to Vault. So it all makes sense. But yeah, so that's the whole point. You've got to specify namespaces, right? So thanks for sharing that. What's the deal? Right, so we've had a quick look inside here. So you can see that it's totally naked, right? It's just a namespace with just all the bare defaults in there. So now we've reconfigured our code. Fingers crossed the demo gods are going to be with me, right? So if I do a TF plan. Oh, actually, I might have to do it init actually, because I've just added a new provider alias. Let's just do it init. Okay, cool. TF plan, see what happens. Namespace 2, here we go. Reference resource. Oh, hang on, I've just done a pebcac, haven't I? I needed to put that in quotation marks. Oops. NS2. Okay, my bad. We go again. Let's see if this works. Okay, cool. So it's looking better now. So now we have free resources. So let's just quickly zoom this in, have a quick look at what it's going to do. So it's going to create the app role backend in our namespace. It's also going to create a user pass auth backend in our namespace, and we're going to create a transit secrets engine within that namespace. So here we go. YOLO. YOLO. See if this runs. And hopefully we get green. Okay, cool. So looks like it's worked on the face of things. We're going to head back over to our namespace. So if we just, let me just copy that token again. Right. So, and then what namespace? Oh, it was NS2, right? So let's just go to, oh, I'm doing localhost, my bad. Didn't mean to do that. Copy this token, start again. So this is NS2. Or maybe I can just refresh that page and it will give me more up-to-date information. We'll see. Yes, it does. So you can see it's configured within namespace 2, the user pass, the app role, and if we go to secrets, we should see transit in there, and we do, right? So that's pretty good. So obviously you would create a template according to what your organization requires, right? So I just created something very, very basic and just saying that all namespaces must have these things, right? Then what the namespace owners go ahead and do with that is their choice, right? So you probably would create some kind of admin policy within there that allows a delegated administrator the permissions to do whatever it is that they're permitted to do within their own namespace. So if they wanted to add a different secrets engine, for example, let's just say that they're now interfacing with Azure and they need the Azure secrets engine, then they can go ahead and do that. But not all the namespaces require that. So that's the whole point, is it gives them almost like their own vault to be able to manage, right? So the next thing is probably going to be even harder than what we've just gone through, right? The next thing I'm going to attempt to do is to migrate some data which has been encrypted using a key in my self-hosted vault over to the HCP Vault, right? Now, I don't exactly know how I'm going to do this. I am literally just going to wing this. I've done like 10% prep. I literally just encrypted some data and popped it in a text file, which I'm going to call a database. So let's just head back over to our code terminal and see if we can write some code to do that, right? Let's just close these things here. We don't need that. And we're going to work in this file here, right? So all I've done so far is I've just created this payload. So this is the secret, right? Vault Brown Bag with DevOps Rob, right? That's the secret. And we can't have that stored in plain text in our database, right? So what we're doing is we create a JSON payload and we send it to our local self-hosted vault to encrypt it, right? Please don't do this. I've just done this just because it makes my life easier for a demo, but in production, please do not put your token within your header like that. There are nicer ways to do it. But for now, please forgive me. This is just a demo, just a proof of concept to see how it goes, right? And then once I've gotten my ciphertext back, then I'm just writing it to a database, right? And we'll just see, where are we? Here, this is my database. It's just a text file for now, right? So what we want to do is we want to create a script which is going to take this ciphertext. So it's going to read our database. It's going to take the ciphertext. It's going to decrypt it into plain text. And then it's going to re-encrypt it using a new key, right? So in order to do that, the first thing we need to do is we'll do it in namespace 2 since we're here, right? And I'll probably just do it in this GUI. Let's just make this bigger. Cool. So I'm just going to create a key. And I'm going to call this key demo. I'm just going to leave all the defaults, right? Nothing special. It's just a cryptographic key. Because that is what we're going to run our encryption function against, right? We're going to run it against this key here. So we're good to go. So now we want to be able to create some code. So this is where it's going to get interesting because, like I say, I have not prepared for this. All I've literally written is that. And then I ran out of time and we had to go live, right? So the first thing we're going to want to do is we're going to want to read in that that ciphertext which is written into our database, right? So what we'll do, I'm just to make life easier, I'm just literally going to copy and paste it, because bash reading into files and all that kind of stuff there is not the point of this here, right? The point of this is what is the workflow to decrypt and re-encrypt, right? So I'm going to put O cipher, which means original cipher, equals, and then we'll just put a string in there, and that's our ciphertext, right? Cool. So essentially what we are doing here is we want to create a payload using that, right? So let me just call this, we'll call it payload. And then what we're going to want to do is base64 encode this thing, right? So hold on, I'm looking at my wrong example. Give me a sec. Right, okay. Actually, what we'll do is call it data. And I have to just follow another example I've written for something else because I can never remember how to use JQ. So what we want to do is that, and it's going to be JQ, right? And JQ, if anyone doesn't know about that, it's a it's like a querying tool in Bash for JSON. It's actually really quite nice. right? So all I'm doing here is I'm just constructing the payload, right? So we're going to call this one CT for ciphertext, and we will call this, what will we call it? We'll call it OCipher, I think it is, right? So it'd be $OCipher. Man, I really hope this works. Right, we'll just close that, and we'll just go onto a new line just to make it a bit more readable. And then here we're going to construct what the text looks like, right? So here's our actual JSON payload, right, which are going to do variable substitution within, right? So we would just create this. So within the API call, it's expecting a key value pair of cipher, and then obviously the value of what the ciphertext is, right? Sorry, ciphertext, and then the value of ciphertext. So we'll just run that. And then we want to just pass in the $of CT, right? Which is this variable up here, which we've just declared here. Right? And that should work, I think, right? And then we'll just, actually what we want to do is I'll just put that on the same line. I think that's going to work, right? So if I just run these two, so let me just, let's create a new shell. I'll just literally just run this, just so we have that variable, and run that. Okay. And then we're just going to echo data just to see what comes about, right? So cool. So that gives us a JSON document, right? So now we can create an API call to Vault to decrypt that ciphertext, right? So I'll just call this decrypt. I don't know. I'll just call it decrypt, right? And here we're just going to run an API call. This is where it's going to get a bit funky. So we'll do $. And like I say, we're just going to use the API just because I just find the API is a universal language. Not everyone is going to have the Vault CLI available to them for different reasons. Maybe you're going to want to do this in a specific development language or programming language. So you can almost certainly guarantee that the API is going to be there, right? Right. So we're going to want to use curl. That's how we do it in Bash, right? And I'll just go into a new line. And in curl, we just want to basically create a header, right? And this header is going to have our token. So again, please do not do this. This is just a demo, just to see what the workflow would look like. I don't really care particularly myself for what I'm doing because this is going to get burnt straight away afterwards, and I don't have anything secret inside there. This is a demo cluster, which I've spun up just for the sake of this demo, right? And then what I'm going to want to do is, let me just move to actually no, I don't need to, is what I'm going to want to do is just copy this token here and just paste it inside here. Like I say, please don't do this. So that's cool. So we've got our first header, right? Now the next header that we're going to need is we need to tell it the namespace to do this within, right? So we'll do another header, and it will be, so I think it's, let me just check from my create script. Yes, this is it. So right. Oh, so I didn't mean to do that. So what we'll do is in the script here is, oh, I didn't mean to do that either. So I'm making all sorts of podcasts at the moment. So we want to read it from namespace 1. So that's fine, right? So namespace 1, and that should be cool. So then we want to make sure that it's a post call, right? So this is a post API call that we're making, right? So if I do, and that's post. Oh. And now we want to give it a payload, right? So what we'll do here is we use the -d in the which is basically the way that you use encode to actually pass your data payload, right? And in here we will put dollar data, right? Dollar data. That should be cool. And then what we want to do is just give it the API endpoint, right? So I think it's going to be something like HTTP, and it'll be 127.0.0.1 8200 and /v1, and it's the transit endpoint. And we want to, the action is to decrypt, and the key, what was the key called? Let's have a look in here. The key was called demo, right? So the key is called demo. And pretty much we just want to pipe it into JQ just to isolate that. Now I can't remember what it is. So I'm just going to nab that and just edit it, right? So if I go here, oh, and then the only thing is, I think the payload that's going to come back is called plain text. We'll see if I'm right. Okay, so we should be able to run that. Let's give it a go. Let's give it a test drive and see what happens, right? And actually, I just realized that what I'm actually doing, I've done the wrong root token here. This is root, because what I'm doing is a decrypt operation against my local development vault here. So if I run that, let's just clear this. Hopefully we get some joy. Okay, so just quickly just echo that. Let's just clear and echo decrypt. Oh, $decrypt. Okay, cool. So that will be the base 64 encoded value, right? So I think if I should just echo that and then pipe it into, I think it's base 64-D maybe. There we go, right? So we have our plain text, right? Woo. It's good to know the first part of the demo is working, right? And the worst thing about this is I'm doing this all on the fly. I'm just using previous demos that I've done for different things and just trying to kind of extrapolate all of that and put it together into something I can demo, right? So now what we've done is been able to take that data, which is stored in our database, and decrypt it using the cryptographic key. Right? Now what we want to do is so what we should do is we should actually pipe that again, and we should do this base 64 decode. Oh, actually no, we don't want to do that, right? We want to keep it base 64 encoded, because that way we can just parse it in to a new payload, right? So we now have that. So next thing we want to do is take this. So if we call this oh no, what should we call it? Like new data or something like that. Call it like new data equals, and then we'll just basically take the same thing. Let me just check the chat, see what's going on in the chat. So chat's all good. Cool. So we'll take this same thing and we'll just swap out some values there, right? Right, so if I pop that in there, hopefully this will work. And we just want to change this variable here to what's it going to be? $decrypt, right? So if we do that, it should put it into a JSON document for us, right? So if I just paste that into my terminal and echo it, $new data. And there we go. We've got a, actually no, it should be plain text, right? We want to call that plain text. That's one thing you've got to be careful of with copy and pasting, so you don't do the wrong things, right? So let's just run this variable again and just echo it to make sure that it comes out correctly. We'll just clear, just so it's less noisy. and echo new data. So we have a JSON document there, right? So what we can now do is we can make an API call to the new vault to take this payload and re-encrypt it, right? So what we'll do is, what do we call that? So we're going to call this action encrypt, right? Equals, it's pretty much going to be the same API call as this. So I can copy this and just edit it, right? Just with the same kind of caution I just talked about. And hopefully this works for us. Right, so we just want to edit that. So what was the namespace that we created a key in? So it's namespace 2. So we want to change that to ns2. We want to just grab that token again. So we'll just grab this from here. We'll just update root here. That's cool. So namespace is set, and we just want to update the address as well. So what we can do is, if I just go here, so this is the HCP portal. Oh great, it's going to want me to log in again, I think. Okay, cool, maybe not. We'll just copy that cluster URL, and then we'll just come in here and just paste over this part here, right? So that's cool. And the next thing we want to do is we want to change that to ciphertext. Right, so let's just have a quick look at the API call. So we're giving it the token in the header. We're creating another header with the namespace in there. It's a post. And oh, the other thing we need to do is change that to new data. Right. So, and then we're just giving it this payload, which we've created here. And we're making an API call against our HCP Vault. And it's going to be this path here. And then the other thing we want to do is just change the action to encrypt. And I think that should work, right? Let me just make sure. I did call a key demo, didn't I? Yes, I did, right? So got a key called demo. So fingers crossed this will work. Right? No, it will not. And I'll tell you why it won't work is because I haven't closed out that. Let's just make sure that looks okay. Yeah, I think that looks okay. Cool. So I think if I run this, big up the viewers inside, by the way. Thank you very much for joining. If I run this, let's just clear this. Let's see if the force is with me. We'll see. Okay. So let's see if we get some ciphertext back. So if I do echo $encrypt, it didn't, right? So something's gone wrong somewhere, which is fine. I would just not run it inside a variable. I would just run it raw like this, just so we can see what the output is, so we can figure out what's gone wrong, right? So here we'll just clear my terminal and just run this and see what error message you get. Permission denied, right? So we are getting a permission denied, which is kind of odd. So we've got namespace 2. Did I actually run the right header? Let me just check. What have I done here? Let's have a quick look at our header here. Namespace. Okay. So that looks okay. So if we just look at my, because what I'm finding with HCP Vault is anytime you get a permission denied, especially when you're going through configuring things, it's probably because it's making a call to the wrong namespace, right? So if we just have a quick look, namespace ns2, we did call the namespace ns2, didn't we? Okay. We'll just go back, just make sure. So we've got that. Oh, do we have to, maybe it's got to be the full path potentially? Maybe it's got to be admin/ns2. Let's give it a go and see if it runs, right? Maybe it's got to be admin /ns2, something like that, right? So I'm just going to run it inside the whole thing. Hey, Grateful Cafe, how you doing? Thanks for joining. How's your week been so far? I'm here just doing a bit of YOLO code right here, just seeing if it works. Oop. See if this works. Cool, clear. And then if we just echo, what do we call it? $encrypted. There you go. Boom. So we just learned a lesson, right? It's not enough. Let's just go back to our API call. It's not enough to just put your namespace as ns2, because you have to think, this is where the mindset shift comes in, right? So we created a namespace called ns2, but that namespace isn't created at the root kind of level. It's nested within admin namespace, right? So admin is our root. So when you're creating these API calls, you must make sure you prefix the namespace that you're making a call against with this admin /, which is why we were getting the permission denied, right? So now we have that. All we do is we just write our new value back to database, right? So if I do echo $encrypt, right? And I just want to redirect that to, I think it's db.text. All right, just run that. And that should rewrite that to our db.text. If I have a look in here, so this is our value here, our Vault encrypted value. If I look at db.text, it should be, let's just see if we can just take some characters and verify. So this first three, 7cx will just verify the last three. And we have w equals and we have w equals there. So what we've now done is we've read the database. We've taken what we've read from the database. We've gone to our old vault. We've said decrypt it and give us the base 64 encoded plain text. And then we've gone to the new vault and said, hey, can you encrypt this value using a new key from the new vault? And that's how it's going to work. You find name. Oh, I didn't know you could do that. So let me get this right. Let's just go back to my code, right? So this one here. So what are you saying, Adil, that I don't need to have line 23 here? I don't need to put in my header what namespace is. I can actually just put it inside my API path. Okay, cool. So where in the path would this go? So so if we look at this path, right? So this is the end of the actual URL, right? And then would it be / namespace equals something? Have you got like an example that you can drop in the chat? Because I didn't know you could do that. So to me, that's really, really good learnings, right? But yeah, so I'm glad I've been able to kind of hack that one away, because that was like, I haven't really prepared for this. Like I had an idea of what I wanted to do for this session today, but I just got so many questions over the last few days, and I literally woke up this morning and said to myself, all right, I'm going to see if I can do this transit example. I was working on the namespace migration example yesterday during a co-working session. Thank you very much, DevOps Adil, for joining that session. That was good to hang out with you. So yeah, this was literally off the cuff, and I had zero confidence it would work, and I'm glad it didn't. So let's just have a look at the example. So you have the vault address here, /v1 / so is the /admin, is that the namespace? So if I was to do /admin /ns2 in my example, or something like, oh yeah, it must be, because you've got Terraform -vault, that's secrets. Chat latency is so bad. Sorry, it's hanging back. I'm sorry about that, Adil. This is good. This is nice to see. So DevOps Adil, what he's done in the chat is he's popped an example here. Let's just have a quick look at this GitHub code. Boom. So describe URL. Okay, cool. So you got URL. So that would be the vault address, and then it's v1. I think that's the version of the API that we're using. At the moment, we only have version 1. And then we have the namespace. I see. That is nice. I didn't know you could do that. So that can save me lines of code, and it's, you know, oh, that is nice. I could actually just put the URL in a variable. I really, really like that. I really, really like that. Gun Girl 34, you're a soldier. You're a soldier for sticking around. And, you know, I know you don't get any of this stuff here. But hey, maybe you picked up a thing or two. You're a soldier for sticking around. Thank you. But yeah, that is really nice. So that's pretty much what I wanted to talk about today, right? If you have any questions in the chat, please pop them in. But yeah, like I say, I was getting a lot of questions about, you know, what does a migration implementation actually look like? How do we go about migrating this stuff here over? And I guess what I've done today is kind of re-emphasize the point I was making last week when I said that a migration kind of looks like copy and configuration over almost, right? So when you look at your secrets engines, you're literally going to say, okay, what do we have in this one here? Let's codify that and let's point that same code at a new one, right? But what I've done is I've literally just taken what we had and just turned it into a Terraform module so we can template that. And it just means it's repeatable because all you have to do is just change the name of the namespace. And then, oh, thank you so much for the cheer, man. I really, really appreciate it. Thank you so, so much. Yeah, all you're doing is just changing the name and the namespace and it will just go ahead and deploy that, right? So line 28 is a string of variables. Let's just share desktop again. Exactly. Yeah, I can see. So this is your first variable, which is URL. This is your second variable, which is that. And I'm guessing this, if it's a transit secrets engine, this is going to be the path for the key plus the encrypt action, I'm guessing, right? All makes sense. It's really good to know that you can do it all in the URL. I really did not know that. I'm curious how you found that out, if you stumbled across it or if there's documentation somewhere. Because if there is documentation, I think we should definitely highlight that as much as we can, because that is super, super useful. I really, really dig that. I won't lie to you. I really do. But yeah, that's, like I say, that's pretty much what I had today. We are coming up to the hour. I don't see many questions in chat, so I'm going to say I hope you learned something from that, or it's at least given you some food for thought about how you can go about migrating, that kind of stuff there. What I'll do is I will clean up my code and I will post it to GitHub. So just make sure you're following me on all socials so that I can post it and you will know exactly when to look on that. I'll just post my my GitHub, sorry, not my Twitter. That's kind of my main form of broadcast these days. So let's put that there. So just make sure you're following me on Twitter. You feel dumb. You're not dumb. I watch your streams where you're doing a load of creative stuff and I don't get it, right? All I know is the end product just looks really dope and you should keep it up. My wife loves the stuff that you do, Gun Girl 34. I love the stuff that you do. I just don't understand the process. Like when I see you doing certain things, I'm like, okay, I do not get it. So, yeah, I appreciate you sticking around. DevOps a deal. I got that wrong. It's URL v1 admin ns2. Yeah, so that's what I was thinking, right? So, okay, so all it is you got the version of the API, and then you got the namespace, and then you've got the path that you're trying to call. So in this case, it was transit encrypt, the key name. Yeah, it makes sense. It makes a whole load of sense. Just quickly before I go, I just want to plug, just in case anyone's not seen it, I've just posted a recent video on my YouTube of my desk tour. Definitely head over to my YouTube and check that out. It should actually be the first video that you see, so I'll just post that. If you like what you see, give that a subscribe as well. And I'm going to call it a day because I'm starving, and you know, just hacking through all of that has really made me hungry. I've worked up an appetite there. So thank you very much for joining. We're going to do something probably a little bit different today. Normally we end the stream, but I think today what we're going to do is we're going to raid a coworker. So we've got someone who's doing a co-working stream, and I think it'd be really dope if we could just like kind of hang around, and if anyone's got work to do, you could kind of just have this on in the background. There's a lot of music playing and just good vibes, and just feel like you're not working alone. A bit like the session I did yesterday. So yeah, we're going to do that, and I'm just going to say thank you very much for joining, and I will catch you next week. Peace out.